sponsored by the City of Almost Park and Recreation, and they were kind enough to give us this opportunity to speak today. That's too loud.
No, it is okay.
Okay.
Just don't stand.
Yeah. You can't point it towards me, that's all. So tonight, this afternoon, turn it down just a little bit. Thank you. We're going to talk about the Wright experience. And we're sitting here in the middle of Wright Park with Ami Wright around us everywhere we look. We may not realize it, but a lot of things here in town have his name on it, have his thumbprint on it that he's responsible for, and we can thank him for helping the city of Alma develop the way it has. So I'm going to try to talk about some of the things that he did, some of the things he's responsible for, some of the things maybe he's not responsible for. So let's start with, who am I? My name is Mike Swims, and I am a member of the Gratiot County Historical and Genealogy Society. I am also on the working committee for the Wright House restoration, and it's primarily focused on the history. But I can't tell you what I'm not. I'm not an expert on this. There's no way that anyone could be an expert on this except for a couple people that are in the house tonight. Okay. I am not an author. I'm barely a researcher. And I'm not a historical know-it-all. So there may be things that I do not know that you may have a question about. Hopefully I've got some people here today that can help us with that. I want to acknowledge that all those that have provided stories and information and insight to the life and contributions of Ami Wright. Most of my discussion today is based on a book called Built on Pines. And it is written by someone that was and probably is still the most knowledgeable historian that ever lived in Gratiot County. He's Dave McMacken. He's been a standard in community history over many, many years. And I also want to point out a couple guys that really have been tremendously helpful for me. Jim Goodspeed, thanks buddy, I appreciate your help. And Elmer Johnson, both these guys are famous when it comes to knowing the background and history of this county. So just, who was Ami Wright? What was his story? So he was born in Grafton, Vermont in July 5th, 1822, 202 years ago. He's not a recent guy. When he was a young boy, he worked on a farm when he and his brother William ran away from home, and they took on to farming in Vermont. While he was on his little field trip away from home, he learned to drive horses, and it based his longtime love for horses and horse riding and everything that had to do with that. And we'll talk about some of those things as we go along about how that was important in his life. He really didn't care much for farming. It's hard to believe, but he did learn to drive horses, and he used that skill to become a freight hauler. And they hauled goods back and forth from Vermont to Boston by horse and wagons. He moved to Bartonsville, Vermont in 1847, where he managed a hotel, and he also managed to marry the owner's daughter. That's pretty convenient, I guess. And he and Henrietta Barton became a couple and got married. In 1850, he had two children, Ami Barton and Sarah Caroline, and he was on his way to discovering a new life. So he sets out to find his fortune. He set out to Detroit to meet up with two sisters and his brother William, who he had run away with before, in 1850. And he decided he was not interested in farming in and around what then was Metro Detroit, and he really didn't want to get back into the hotel business. So he had a wife and 2 kids and no job. So what do? You pack everything in your backpack and you head north. We still do that today. So he decided to take his family north to Saginaw. In Saginaw, he travels from Detroit to Pontiac by train. And then from Pontiac, he went to Flint, and they had to take up one of the plank roads like the one we have over that used to be from Saginaw to Breckenridge, just to make it a little more comfortable. But I'm pretty sure that probably wasn't a comfortable ride going across there. So as he was on his way up north between Flint and Saginaw, he noticed that the forests were built with, or had grown full of ancient forest trees. We've got a couple that are on this property that are about the size that they said that the trees were between 3 and 4 feet in diameter at the base, straight as a board, and clear, not free, with no branches because they were so tall. And then this tree here behind us is probably one that's got a trunk that's about 3, maybe 3.5 feet. We've got a couple back over this other side. Those trees have probably been here since Ami planted them. Can you imagine what the trees look like if they had been there for 200 and 300 years? They must have looked like California redwoods. So on his way up, he decided he was going to make a change in his life, and he was going to get involved with timber. And timber was very important at this point in time in and around the Saginaw Valley. He bought his first piece of land up on the Cass River that's just outside of Carroll. And that's where he had his jumping out point. In Saginaw, he started what's called a timber cruiser. And a cruiser would be out, probably him and one of his buddies, and they're backpacking and camping across the forests of Michigan between Saginaw and here. They would sleep out in the open, carry whatever food they needed with them, and they would try to find their the best groves of hardwoods and pine woods, and then stake it as a claim, and then rush back to the land office and claim it for their own. That worked out pretty well. They had found some property, some forest that they had groves that they were going to cut down. But soon he started setting up lumbering camps, and the camps were set up with workers and buildings and equipment and all the tools that they needed. And they were pushing trees off into the rivers, specifically like the Tittabawassee River, pushing them out to the Saginaw River so they could get them to the mills in Saginaw. Saginaw was known as one of the premier places for lumber to come from during that period of time. Ami says, okay, this is fun cutting down trees and pushing them in, but let's move down this economic timeline to a sawmill. And he wound up building a sawmill right on the river between Saginaw City and East Saginaw. And it burnt once, but they built a second one, and it was considered to be the big mill in Saginaw. It really, really cut up a lot of lumber. And at this particular time, the lumber business was expanding because there was so much need for lumber for construction. In 1871, the city of Chicago burned down to the ground, and they were trying to rebuild it. So they were sending lumber to Chicago. Anything past Illinois, not much forest there unless you're in Wisconsin and Minnesota. And both those places did get into the lumber business eventually. And there was also a lot of stuff going on the east way from Saginaw, back into Pennsylvania and New York. They had stripped out most of the good groves of trees by then, and so they were running out of lumber also. So Saginaw was a place to be when it came to putting lumber together. Ami had traveled to Gratiot County as a timber chaser. In 1879, his wife Harriet, her health started to go down pretty dramatically. And instead of having her stay in Saginaw with the two kids, they decided to go back to Sarasota Springs, New York. And in Sarasota Springs, if you're familiar with them at all, they were a mineral water with a bath and all the medicinal benefits of mineral waters. St. Louis has had one. We had one here. Now, I don't know about you, but I know the only thing that ever came from the mineral water here is just rust stains on your sink. Because the water is so hard here. That's a pretty good indication that they're pumping pure mineral water here out of the ground. But while he sends his wife and kids back to Sarasota, Ami's traveling back and forth, running his business in Saginaw, and coming to Gratiot County and coming to Alma. And he starts setting up businesses here a little at a time. In 1884, Harriet passes away. And one of her last requests was that Ami marry, after an appropriate time, Anna Case, who was the family seamstress. And it sounded like that she was someone that kind of helped take care of the kids and kind of cared for her while she was ill. And Ami agreed. I got to have some help here, I suspect. So Ami had many, many business interests in Gratiot County. Some of the things that I want to point out was like the Light and Power Company, Central Michigan Produce, Alma Manufacturing, the roller mills and the sugar mills. The Central Michigan Products Company started out as the creamery that was behind the roller mill. And they would go out and collect milk and churn it up and turn it into a fine quality butter, and then they sell it. They also got into picking up eggs from farms, and they also worked a little bit into some poultry. Alma Manufacturing Company manufactured in 1903 a small one-cylinder gas engine farmers could use to pump water, and they could use it for their cream separators. They didn't have the advantage of having a giant steam engine to generate power in some of these remote places that they were farming. That particular company, the Alma Manufacturing, in 1911 became Alma Truck. Alma Truck went bankrupt. Not a good sign. But after that got reorganized by the people that took over, it eventually wound up being Republic Truck. So it's kind of a progression. They had a little slip and fall there in the middle with Alma Truck. And the Light and Power Company produced electrical power for the hotel, the Opera House, the Livery, Alma Sanitarium, and the Wright Mansion. Eventually powered the streets, had put lights on the streets downtown. So the Alma rolling mill used to be right downtown. They cut a mill race so they could bring power. The mill was run by hydroplower instead of steam, so it was they had a water wheel there. It was built in 1881 after a failed venture by another man here that started a granary. It could produce 100 barrels of flour in 12 hours a day. Pretty significant accomplishment for a little town like this. And it was built out of this cream color brick from Bailey's Brickyard. That's going to be important later on the story. Frontier Communications is on that spot now, down on Superior Street. The sugar that was imported, to the United States from the Caribbean because they had sugar cane and they worked the sugar that way. So on a trip to Germany, Ami investigated the growing and the processing of sugar beets. I'm sure no one's ever seen a field of sugar beets around here because we just don't have many, right? Well, they actually had the seeds imported, and the closest sugar beet processing plant was in Essexville, which is way on the other side of Saginaw. So he decided he was going to build a sugar beet processing plant. And the importance of that is that it takes a ton of sugar beets to produce 150 pounds of sugar. So it makes the transportation of the end product much easier than moving train cars full of sugar beets to Essexville. There were like 12 sugar processing plants across the state, and this one was by far probably the most efficient. And that particular building was located right across the street from the current library, just across the railroad tracks. And you can't see this one, but you can still see the last remaining building is on that piece of property. And it existed until 1952. And Alma Sugar Company got absorbed into Michigan Sugar Company, and they still exist as a conglomerate today for, not a conglomerate, that's the wrong word, but a collection of sugar beet farmers. Consortium. There we go. That's it. So, Ami started out as a young man in farming, and he understood that farming was really important. And once he started clearing the land of trees and removing the stumps and moving the stones, it gave them a spot to farm. And the process started in about 1879. At one point, he was the largest individual farmer in Michigan. He had 26 farms and 3,500 acres in Gratiot County, and ran farms like he ran the sawmills. He would put a foreman in charge to follow up with the day-to-day activities, and then he would kind of give them direction on what he wanted them to do. He introduced innovative dairy farming practices. The dairy farm was back across the river, and it was across the street in that subdivision from the armory, and that's where the dairy farm was. And people would talk about how clean that facility was, and he was just fastidious about making sure that everything was clean and tidy. He just did not, even the farms when he'd visit the homesteads that the caretakers lived in, he would not put up with trash in the sidewalks or trash on the yards, or not taking care of the property. And he introduced the sugar beet to Gratiot County agriculture. He had the seeds sent here from Germany. The sugar beet production, though, was pretty labor intensive, and one of the problems was that they have to be plucked or thinned out after the sprouts come up, and it takes a lot of time. It takes a lot of effort and a lot of manpower to do it. And at that point in time, also the roads were pretty shot here. Moving those heavy wagons across dirt roads in the spring and rather in the fall when it was time to harvest, just left them ruddy and just in terrible shape. And one of the things that he did was he helped finance the roads. No one's ever heard that before, right? Fix the damn roads. Well, that's what he did. He fixed the damn roads, so the wagons and teams could get in and out and get the sugar beets back to the factory to process. So he helped with that. You sorry these are a little hard to see. I apologize. But this is a picture of Woodbine Farm. It's over on Elger, just south of the cemetery, Riverside Cemetery. And this was the headquarters farm for all of his operations here in Gratiot County. And it's not much to look at now, just a clear open field, but it was interesting to me just to go there and stand there and kind of look around and imagine that the size and the scope of the farming operations that were going on. Some other contributions that he had was the Alma Springs Sanitarium, the Opera House, the Wright Hotel, Alma College, and this spot, Wright Park. One of the first things I'd like to talk about is the sanitarium. At this time, it was built in 1886, and at that time, as far as medical research had gone, it said the mineral water was some kind of cure-all for everything that ever happened to you. Obviously, it really doesn't work that well. But one of the things they did do with the sanitarium is people would come here to vacation. Can you imagine coming to Alma for a vacation instead of going to like Fort Lauderdale? No, I don't think so. But it was a good stuff. But they did. They came here because the sanitarium was such a cool place to go. They had all sorts of activities. They had a pool. They had just excellent food. Great accommodations, and they had this park that was attached to it. This park used to be called Sanitarium Park, and it was 10 acres, and it had a fish pond, and it has, all the fresh air you can stand. However, I'm pretty sure that during that time of the century, that with all the wood-burning fires and all the horses that were everywhere, it probably wasn't that much fresh air. But it was at least a place to go and get out and get away. The sanitarium lasted a while until about 1910, when its popularity just dropped off. And as we know, that there's a building here down the street on Wright Avenue called Masonics Pathways, and the Masonic old folks home in Grand Rapids had burned, and they were looking for a new place. And Ami had this white elephant sitting over here, actually just right on the other side of this building, sitting here that needed to do something with. So he took the opportunity to convince the people at the Masonic home that they should take it over, and they did, for the amazing price of $1. I hope that didn't break the bank. So, and that was, they were concerned about the maintenance of the house. And yes, you can see this building right here that's next to the sanitarium. I don't know why that beats it so bad. But it's still there. You can see the upper floors of the house, of the caretaker's house right here. And it's the funeral home. The building is still here. The inside was decorated to the nines. Polished wood, marble tops, gas lights and electric lights. I don't know how that worked, but it had to be exciting. I got a couple pictures. This is one of the reading rooms. They had a billiard hall and a dining room that looks like some of the finest restaurants you've ever seen. And guess what? It was right over here, where Child Advocacy building is. That's the site where the sanitarium was. So it's right here. The Masonic Temple, or the Masonic Pathways, moved to its current location on the site of the Links, which is just up the road a little ways here. That was Henry, I'm going to say this wrong, Lancashire, Ami's son-in-law, opened a 9-hole golf course right up the street at the end of the park, because he learned to play golf when he was out east for one of his summer trips. And they sold that property to Masonic Pathway. So the spot that sits on is the golf course for the sanitarium. The Opera House. What a beautiful building it is now. It hasn't always been that way. It's burnt. It's been deserted. It took them 3 years to build it because they couldn't decide how big it should be and what they should do with it. But Ami took it over and decided he wanted a space for retail, a bank, and a meeting place for the community, for entertainment and for speakers and that sort of thing. So the Opera House opened in 1890. And downstairs had four retail shops and a bank, and all 4 of them were Ami's businesses. There was an entertainment and meeting area upstairs. They even had their own band that played out of the Opera House. And they would often perform at public celebrations like parades and when someone come to town. And again, notice that yellow brick, that cream color brick that the building is built out of. So, the Opera House, we've all been there. It was rehabbed in 2012 for Alma College resident units upstairs and the upper floors, and retail spaces in the lower levels. So it's a beautiful building that can come back to life after. Come back to life. Wait, there's more yellow brick buildings in this town. Here's one. It's across the street from the mansion. Here's the back of the Opera House and the church down the State Street. They're all built with the same color brick. Now, I don't know what happened to all that brick when they tore down the sanitarium, but they said they took it down carefully and reused the brick and the wood. So we may still have pieces of the sanitarium built on other places in town, based on the color and the condition of the brick, because most of them beat up pretty hard. The Wright House Hotel on the corner of State and Superior. It was said to be one of the finest hotels north of Detroit. It's decorated with the finest stained and polished wood and marble. The meals that were served were exquisite for out-of-town guests. The hotel had its own livery in the rear that the horses could be tended and stabled during visits to town. The Wrights often stayed there before their mansion was completed. When they had large groups of friends or dignitaries coming from out of town, they would put them up at the hotel. They would feed them at the hotel. They would entertain them at the hotel. So it was like an extension of their house before their house was actually completed. So what's on that corner right now? It was W.T. Grant. Now it's the Alma hardware store. And there are rumors that in the basement of that building, there's still some things that could resemble the hotel. Some hotel space you can still kind of identify. So we'll get to see that probably in October. They're going to have a tour down there. So we'll get to check that out. Sanitarium Park. This was all connected across the back. We've got Sarah Villa down at this end. They've got the Wright Mansion at that end. They had the sanitarium in between. We've got a couple other buildings here. The main entrance used to come right through here. Had a circle drive that you could walk. Had a fish pond. Had a band shell that the Opera House band played. So it was encouraged the guests to come out and enjoy the fresh air, like I said. So they would come here and just kind of hang out. Very, very heavily treed at the time when it was the park for the sanitarium. We must have lost a few trees since then, or they've cleaned it up a bit, but we still have some here that are pretty sizable, especially over this way in the back. There's some trees back that have been here at least 100 years, I would suspect. And this park was gifted to the city of Alma, and they renamed it Wright Park. And the monument is like right over there, and it's got the plaque on it. And when I came here last week to take some pictures at the park, I'd been here maybe once or twice, but thinking about the fact what this piece of property has been in the past and what it is now, it's kind of humbling that all this is still here and it's still usable, and it's so well taken care of. So another thing that Ami was really impressed and emphatic about was having a school here. I'm pretty sure at that time of the century, not many people completed, 8th grade and continued on any further. But he was really emphatic about having a normal school here. And they spoke with an owner of a normal school in Fenton, brought him up to look around. He decided he would stay, and in 1886 they decided we're going to do it. They put some land together. They stole some property. They screwed some people out of some property. They got the property together, and then they started the school and they started building. The first 2 buildings went up pretty quickly. But after that first year, they decided that there's got to be something better than this. And the Presbyterians show up on our doorstep here, and they're looking for a place to build a college in mid-Michigan. And Mount Pleasant was in the running. Ithaca was in the running. Poor St. Louis, they get beat out of everything when it comes to Ami, right? They were in the running for it. But Ami had the deed to the property and the deeds to the buildings that was on the normal school. And he dangled on his bait and said, okay, we'll do this. We've already got a head start on everyone else. And sure enough, they put the deal together, and they had a couple of halls that wound up being Alma College. So, and Ami served as treasurer for the college for several years, also made significant donations to the college. Railroads were the lifeline in the 19th century for towns and villages. If you don't have one, you're not going to make it. You just don't last very long. And Ami fought with the folks in St. Louis about getting that track from Lansing to up this direction to Mount Pleasant. And it was a fist fight, pretty much. But Ami won out, and they moved the train so it would come through St. Louis and back through Alma and back up towards Mount Pleasant. And we had a big train station down south of town, and imagine that same building or same spot that the Heritage Dental office is now. And funny thing, it looks just like a train station. We also had a freight depot that was across the street from it, where products that we were sending in and out of town, whether it was sugar or flour or any of the other things that they were manufacturing or processing here, they moved those commodities in and out of that freight depot. And you can see this little building right here. Guess what? It's still here. Still sits on that property. So this is what's left of the freight depot. And here's one of our favorite spots. Saravella built for Sarah and Henry Lancashire. It was finished in 1995, and it was a spring and fall home for the Lancashire family, husband and wife and kids. Sarah was pretty demanding on what she wanted it to be, and like most dads, he twisted his arm a little bit and he conceded. She changed some plans while he was in Europe, and they went ahead and did stuff. But come to when it was finally finished, it seemed to be the place that he expected it to be. And so that's on right behind us, right here. So the Wright Mansion happens to be why I'm here, not entirely, but Amy and Anna Wright moved here after it was completed in 1888. They were joined by numerous relatives until Ami's death in 1912. It seemed like every Case family member lived with them at some point in time. Anna and her sister Elizabeth each continued to live there until their deaths in 1925 and 1931 respectively. In 1934, the mansion was sold and became the R.B. Smith Memorial Hospital until 1976. 1956. At that time, then the hospital moved to where it is now over on Warwick. Thank you. On Warwick. And in 1959, it became home to Northwood Institute before they moved away and started up their campus up in Midland. So the Wrights lived at the hotel for several years before the mansion was finished. The house is decorated with inlaid wood floors, 7 fireplaces. It has steam heat. It had a carriage house on the back of the property that was as big as the house, and it would have been right there, right over your shoulder. And the house is right there still. The widow of R.B. Smith, who was a prominent physician here in Omaha, bought the property in 1934, and it became the R.B. Smith Memorial Hospital until 1956. This is a picture of it last week. We had the fence put back up. It shows a little bit of the damage that's age and time that's caused on the building, but it's still a good sturdy fixture and a good sturdy construction house. It was purchased in February with donations by the Gratiot County Historical Society. Here's a shameless plug for you. We have two spots you can go to check out the progress and to see what we're up to. It's the Wright House Museum.org is our website, and the Wright House Restoration Alma Facebook page. And we have stuff that goes on there most every single day. We'll keep you updated with the progress, the things that are going on, things that we've got trying to do to raise money to make this place what it should and should be and will always be a piece of history here in Alma. So, Ami Willard Wright passed away in Alma on May 5th, 2012, at 89 years and 10 months old. He was pretty old for that time, that particular time frame. Men didn't usually live past 40 if you were lucky. He had a long and fulfilling life. They transported his body back to Grafton, Connecticut for burial. After his death, Ami's assets and businesses were sold off and liquidated. His only surviving daughter, Sarah Hale, died in 1947. Ami was all about finding opportunities. He was a man that recognized an opportunity and stuck with it. And he made the connections between lumbering, farming. You clear the land first, now you've got a spot to plant. You got stuff to plant, now you got to process the things that you've planted. You need to transport those things that you've planted from clearing the land and from the forest. And you got to take those products that you've transported turn them into commerce. And he found those opportunities as his life went on. So, about finding opportunities. You need a place to stay, build a hotel. Need a place to do business in the community, build a business block, call it the Opera House. Have acres and acres of good, fertile soil. What do? You start farming. You have tons of wheat and sugar beets. Now what? You build a mill to process them. You need goods moved to market. You build a railroad. You need building supplies. You build a sawmill and buy a brick factory. You need workers. You make a place that's a great place to live, and you can earn a living. And I think that's what Omni had in mind to do. And things really haven't changed much as of today. Still the same thing. Thank you for your kind attention to this presentation. I hope you've learned something for it. And again, thank you so much for being here. Like I said, we have two of the biggest experts that ever lived here. If you have any questions, I will easily direct you to them. And if you have anything specific you'd like to know about, I'm quite sure that both these fellows can pull that piece of information right out of the air. They do it at our meetings every other week at an amazing level. So, any questions? Any stories you'd like to share? Okay then, class dismissed. Morgan's here.
Right. Hi guys, I'm Morgan. I'm the Parks and Recreation Program Coordinator. Can you guys hear me okay? Okay, I'm not that loud. But I just wanted to tell you some events that are coming up and do my own shameless plug. And thank you so much for telling us, especially about the history of this park. That's really cool to know that the place that we come hang out just has some extra meaning to it that I didn't even know about. And now that the presentation's over, I would encourage you to go look at the monument, which is over near the bathroom building, because that's cool too. But we are doing something here every Tuesday. So next Tuesday, we're partnering with the fire department, police department, public works, and Granger to bring out all of their trucks and cool vehicles. So if you know someone who is really into trucks, like maybe grandkids or yourself or anyone who likes that kind of thing, just come out. We're going to be talking to the people who operate those and do some demonstration and play with the sirens and that kind of thing if you like that. And
Unless
then
you live in the neighborhood right here, then
he's going to hear it probably. And then the week after that, we're doing an event called Writers in Wright, which is for anyone who likes books, reading, or writing. And we are partnering with the literary community over at Alma College, the Gratiot County Herald, and some local authors. And we're going to have some activities and some mini presentations just talking about writing, journalism, and stuff that they do at the library to support local authors. And there's going to be some book signings and some book sales. So that is the things coming up, and you can always find what we're doing on the Parks and Recreation Facebook page, which is just called City of Alma Parks and Recreation. And you could also come see me after this event if you want to talk about anything or have any questions answered. And big thank you to the Wright House crew.